All right, good afternoon, everyone. How's the energy level here? Is Bitcoin going to go up or going to go down in the next 10 minutes? Is the prices? Both? Okay, very happy to be here. I guess I was here a year ago. How many of you were here a year ago and came to my talk? Did any of you get those free Bitcoins I gave out that time? Man, there was a mad rush to the stage after the talk I gave them out. But unfortunately, the prices have gone up so much, I can't afford to give them out this year. Okay, so I'm going to talk about Bitcoin regulation from the perspective of operating a company in China, a global perspective from the East. And essentially, BTCC was previously known as BTC China. And the question is, what's China's role in Bitcoin? Well, China's role is that everyone in China is crazy about Bitcoin. So for those of you who have been to China, been to East Asia, know what I'm talking about. And it's about buying, selling, trading, and all that. So I'm going to talk about a brief history of Bitcoin through the lens of China and the regulatory stories behind it through BTC prices. So in the early days, when BTC China first started as China's very first exchange, actually the prices started at 120 RMB, which is about 10, 15 pounds of Bitcoin. So that was in June of 2011. And then what we saw was for the next 1.5 years, it was sort of trading sideways. There was just not much action happening. So if you got lucky, if you bought in the fall of 2011 or in the winter, you could have got in at less than $1, less than a pound, okay, or less than 2 pounds. So that was in the early 2011, 2012. And then what happened is the first rally happened in April of 2013. And what happened there was, you see the ramp up. I don't think I have a laser pointer, do I? Oh, I do, a small one. Okay, it doesn't work. The ramp up happened in April. And that was right after in the US, FinCEN came out and had a ruling about Bitcoin as a sort of digital asset and cautioned people about it. So at the time, FinCEN was the first to say something. The SEC, the IRS, the CFTC, none of them said anything. So that was the first time. It also coincided with the Cyprus banking sort of situation, the run on banks in Cyprus. So that was the first rally. It took Bitcoin price to $265 on MTGOX. And of course, came back down a bit. But if you zoom out again, by the way, the green line is the height of the previous graph. So this graph, the top of it, is now the green line, which is way low on the bottom. So I go to the third graph. So it went up a factor of 20 times. Okay, this is in April of 2013, the first rally. The second rally happened in late 2013. Again, I've lowered the graph y-axis. So now the green line is the previous graph. So that small blip there in the middle, that's the April rally. And by December, it went up to $1,200 US, which is roughly an ounce of gold. And this is when China came down very hard on regulation. On December 5th of 2013, they issued a statement, the PBOC talked about how Bitcoin is not a legitimate currency, be careful, exchanges should operate legally and so on and so forth. And we saw a massive decline in prices, okay? So, but what you notice is, despite the fact that this is like the second sort of a crackdown globally, and a big hit on Bitcoin, the prices did come down, but it never reached what it hit in the previous rally. So it never dipped below that. Okay, so now you see a second U-shape, and this time goes up, I think, 4x in price increase, okay? And that's all within the 1 year, okay, from the very bottom. So if I look at the next graph, I'm going to compress it further, and now we're looking at the bear market. This is the 2013, and then now the bear market 2014 and 15. And you're going to see where does the prices end up. So now we've compressed it further down, and the first rally is really just like a small sort of speed bump. You'll see that more apparent later. And of course, the great bull market of Bitcoin was 2017. This past year went up 20 times. And of course, the graph goes up even higher now, reaching, at the time, it's about $3,000 US at the very top of this graph. So we see all these sort of U-shapes go up, come down. It's almost like a fractal pattern. This time it went up a factor of 5x. So the question is, what happened there was at the end of September, China PBOC once again cracked down on Bitcoin. This time they said no exchanges, no ICOs, no trading at all of cryptocurrencies, regardless if it's crypto against fiat or crypto against crypto. So China had a very strict policy. That was enacted on September 14th, and we actually, BTC China, even though we've been running for the longest time, we actually had to comply and, how do you say it, and close down. And that's why, sorry? Sorry about that. Well, no, it's good because I actually closed down. That's why I'm able to be here in London with you. So my family's happy. So what happened after this crackdown is Bitcoin prices even went higher after that. So if you didn't know, on the day of September 14th, when we announced it, Bitcoin prices fell by 25, 30%. But soon after, it recovered. And if you look, now this is the last graph, expanded out to another 5 years. And we see all these ups and downs, right? So if you look at the 2013 rally, the 2017 rally, it's all squished down to very, very small. It's practically a small speed bump, if not just a speck of dust. So that's the power of logarithmic growth in terms of prices going up. So I fully expect to go higher. In fact, my graph ends in September because my data from BTC China stopped at that point. But that red arrow is where prices are today, roughly $10,000. Okay, so it's gone up, a big factor. And the question is, what's going to happen? What I predict is that's going to be a U-shaped sort of trading sideways for the next few months, the next few years maybe, and then it could go up again to the moon. And by then it could be 100,000, 500,000, even $1 million. Okay, so in each case, what we see is in each case, every time the government tries to swat it down to kill Bitcoin, what happens? It's resilient, okay? And these are the properties of Bitcoin itself. It turns out, regardless of the properties, in China, Bitcoin has not been about payments and spending. It's more about how people make money, trading and investments, okay? So I'm going to talk about the regulation. So what do Chinese regulators think of Bitcoin? What do Chinese regulators think of Bitcoin? Would you guys like to know? Yes? Anyone? Well, why do you care? You don't live in China. Okay, but it turns out what China regulators think about Bitcoin is a proxy what global regulators think about it. It's just that the global regulators don't actually act so fast and actually say it out loud, whereas Chinese regulators are acting pretty fast. So here's the gotcha, okay? Essentially, there are a lot of challenges for Bitcoin and regulating Bitcoin. Everything from decentralized, not a real currency, it violates foreign capital controls, it's aiding money laundering, lack of real identity, it's been used for fraud, a lot of pyramid schemes, a lot of hacking and security risks with Bitcoin, ICO regulation issues, taxation issues, of course, and there's also graft and corruption that uses Bitcoin. Speculative trading, markets can crash, and finally, it can compete with a future government-issued crypto. So those are all the litany of topics that are, going around in their heads for the regulators about how to take care of Bitcoin. Okay, but the coolest thing about this, what I think is the greatest thing, is Bitcoin is actually an invention and not a discovery. Think about it. The greatest achievements in humankind, whether it's fire, whether it's electricity, those were all discoveries, science and so on. But Bitcoin is actually an invention. It was created, just like the internet. So it has certain properties that was created. It was created in the white paper in 2008, late 2008, and it was actually instantiated in January 2009. So we just celebrated the ninth birthday of Bitcoin. It's not even 10 years old yet. But Bitcoin was created with certain properties that caused these issues for the government. It was created as a distributed open source, peer-to-peer, decentralized ledger that tracks digital currency flows from accounts to accounts with no real name attached, with no identity except for a cryptographic private key, and it's limited to 21 million. So everything I just said there, a mouthful, you guys sort of understand, and it uses the blockchain, of course. It was designed to not be suppressible, to not be able to be shut off. Think about that. Today, in the 9th year of Bitcoin, we're in the 10th year actually now, the question is, what can governments do? As you know, Bitcoin, the blockchain, increases the block height by 1 block every 10 minutes. Every hour, there's 6 blocks and so on. You guys know that? Yes? So what can governments in the world do in the next 2 years to stop that? Will there be a future where 2019, 2020, I come and sit down here and give a speech, and we announce, oh, too bad, the blockchain stopped growing last August? Would that happen? Is it possible? So I argue it's not possible because it was designed to continue going through proof of work and so on. So the global pattern from governments and regulators, what I expect is that they will regulate exchanges, they will ban ICOs and token issuance. There's going to be more burden to show your proof of funds, where your income came from. And similarly, there's a stricter KYC process to really for you to prove who you are when you buy Bitcoin and sell Bitcoin. And of course, the most important thing for governments is limiting the transfers so you can control the movements, and also the taxation issues. Okay, levying taxes on people's gains on investments and so on, whether it's capital gains or trading gain. So this is the pattern. This is not going to stop. This is how it's been for the last 5 years. This is how it's going to be for the next 5 years. So get used to it. As long as you're going from crypto to fiat, from fiat to crypto, you will always encounter these. How are we doing on time? Okay, all right. So why do Bitcoin prices keep going up? You guys want to know why? The reason is that Bitcoin's value does not come from the endorsement, acceptance, or regulation by governments. So the price valuation, the fact that it keeps going up, the fact that it's valuable, it's not because of what the governments are doing, nor is it because of what the governments are not doing, right? Rather, the price is because of its competitive nature with other fiat currencies. So the inherent failures, limitations, and inconveniences of the current monetary system, the financial system that we work in today, the money, the sterling pound, the euro, the US dollar, how it's created, how it's monetized, and so on and so forth. So it's all those failures and limitations, all those issues that's causing Bitcoin to have value. And the more they print the money, the more Bitcoin prices go up. Okay, last thing to share is, so just so you know, governments worldwide will do more and more to suppress Bitcoin. But I truly, firmly believe that Bitcoin will continue to survive because it was designed and engineered to survive this. Okay? So lastly, how to invest in Bitcoins. I want to just share with you 4 tidbits, 4 mistakes not to make. You guys ready? Okay, see who's made this by applause, okay? Number 1, when you buy Bitcoin, not to be indecisive. So when you hear about Bitcoin, you should have just purchased it and not waited a year or 2 or 3 like I did. Anyone make this mistake? Yes, yes. Round of applause, okay. All right, number 2 mistake is when you do decide to buy, you didn't buy enough. Anyone? Yes, yes, clap. Okay, number 3 mistake is selling your Bitcoins after a small gain. Now, I'm not talking about 5-10% gain. I'm talking about 100%, 200%, 300% gain. Anyone make that mistake? Bought in $100, sold it at $400, right? Anyone's clapping, they don't want to clap. It's too embarrassing. Okay. Number 4 mistake is selling Bitcoin during a panic crash. So as you know, in the last week, Bitcoin has really taken a tumble. It's gone from 20,000 US dollars down to 10,000 just in a matter of 1 month, 1.5 months. So I would call this a sort of panic crash. And obviously, time will prove me right or wrong, but those are my 4 pieces of advice. Okay, thank you very much. Should we take 2 questions? We have a minute? Okay. Yeah.
Time for a couple of questions.
Okay, sure.
If there are any questions
Sure.
in the room, are there any questions? Yes, down at the front here.
Gentlemen, yeah?
Very enthusiastic
Go ahead.
arm up in the air.
Step up and...
Thank you very much, Julio Alejandro. So about government intervention itself, what would be like your first recommendation for people who want to see this upcoming decentralization, more libertarian paradigm idea of keeping it outside of the hands of regulators and governments? Like if you could give us like practical steps.
Are you asking who wants that, or are you asking, what's your question?
Everyone, I hope everyone in the audience in here. The question is, what would you recommend us to keep it more decentralized, less government, less regulation?
So my answer is, Bitcoin has already been invented and created. So Bitcoin's not going to change. Does that make sense? It's like the alphabet. It's not going to change. The alphabet A to Z, that's what it is. So it depends on how you use it. So some countries can say, I don't like the letter whatever, and they can avoid to use it, but the letter's still there. So Bitcoin is going to be here regardless of how governments regulate it. So governments can regulate what people do. They can regulate what companies do, but they cannot regulate thought and communication. So unless you believe in the world where you think future communication, interpersonal communication, and internet is going to be strictly, severely limited and filtered, then that's not a free world. So as long as we live in the free world where we appoint members of our society to become government, to set the rules, I think Bitcoin will survive. Yeah. Thank you. One more question? Why don't you pick? All right, there.
So recently, because of China's production capacity in ASICs machines specifically, almost more than half of Bitcoin's mining power has been concentrated in China. Is this still a decentralized system, or does this pose a risk to actually a free and open network, because Bitcoin's open to attack if more than 50% of the network is controlled, let's say, by a government?
The way I look at it is, it's not about how many percent of Bitcoin mining machines are run by men versus women, are run by Chinese people versus someone holding a European passport, or if it's run by someone who's heterosexual versus homosexual. Because there is no distinguishment. Because the rule is anyone, I don't care if you're a dog, if you're human, or if you are a robot, you can start mining and contribute to the Bitcoin hashing power. Does that make sense? It's a non-discriminatory nature of who's allowed to participate in mining. That's what makes it decentralized. So the fact that there may be a lot of men who are in crypto, does it mean that crypto is a man's thing and not a woman's thing? It's not. Right? So it's nothing to do with nationalities or where the machines are, but rather it's due to the fact that it's open.
It's the fact that if the government gets involved.
It's not. They can't get involved because each machine is run by individual mining operators, and they have free will. They can. Has nothing to do with it. They all breathe oxygen. So you're saying, oh, because we're all human, we breathe oxygen, so this is all. So Bitcoin is now a human thing, and therefore the aliens cannot touch it. But it's just. Huh? Any what?
The mining pools are where the power is. They do the validation. The people doing the hashing are working for the mining pools. The mining pools are the control.
So I live in 2018. Last I checked, there are about 25 mining pools.
But only 4 of them are more than 50%.
That is not true. Mathematically, there cannot be 4 mining pools more than 50%.
Well, there are.
Yeah. Okay, I'll take that offline. Okay, all right. I'm happy to engage in debates on. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.